how you can steal Netflix's $270 billion strategy to grow your podcast. Imagine your podcast as a TV series on Netflix. Now, think about it. Why is Netflix so addictive? Netflix has a total of 270 million users, which to me is pretty insane. And for context, Italy has 60 million, South Korea has 52 million, Spain 47, Argentina, Kenya 45, 53, for a total combination of 257 million. That's still a smaller population versus Netflix's user base. It's fair to say that Netflix has a global reach and have mastered the art of audience growth. The crazy part is, unlike a podcast or YouTube or any other free streaming platforms, users have to pay to play. They have to pay to engage. So it's pretty nuts when you think they've accumulated this number of users who are paying every single month. But the question is how? How did they get so big? How did they keep their users coming back for more? How did they keep them engaged and binging their content? And finally, what the hell does this have to do with you growing and monetizing your podcast? I promise it'll all make sense shortly. So look, my name is Anthony Maneri. I'm the co-founder of GetMoreListeners.com. It's a company helping education-based podcasters, business owners, coaches, experts in their fields turn a slow growth podcast into a rapidly growing positive ROI show. Over the last 4 years, I've interviewed and coached 350 plus podcasters, and I'm also the co-host of Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing, which generates around $10,000 of attributed sales each and every month. So the reason why they grow was honestly pretty simple, and it was all because of something called CineWatch algorithm. Now you might be thinking, what the hell is CineWatch algorithm? So let me explain. Netflix, when they first got started as a DVD rental business. And as it grew, they faced a few challenges, helping users navigate an expanding catalog of titles. Like, how the hell are they going to give people the right DVDs and right movies to watch? How are they going to keep people coming back for more? And what happened was a lot of users really struggled to find movies they liked. They wanted to binge new content, but they could never really pinpoint what was going to work specifically for them. And because they didn't enjoy it, well, it just meant that they were losing a lot of users. So their solution in 2000 was essentially to introduce CineWatch. It's essentially a system that was designed to recommend movies to users based on previous ratings and viewing patterns of similar users. So it's kind of like creating lookalike audiences, thinking what do they like, looking at the data, and then predicting based off of that. So again, to allow them to predict which movies a user would enjoy based on preferences amongst other users. So why did it work so well? Well, CineWatch was essentially a personalized experience, making it easier for subscribers to discover movies they might not have found on their own. It's pretty smart if you think about it. It's pretty neat, right? And by, of course, improving the recommendations, Netflix increased their user satisfaction and their engagement. More users were more likely to find content that matched their needs, therefore they stayed much longer. So again, after the change, Netflix transitioned from DVD to then rental streaming, and the refined algorithm became a crucial and such an important part of them retaining subscribers, you know, even though they've got so many competition within the streaming space. So if you've got a Netflix account, you know how to give you recommendations, what you might like, what's trending, all that good stuff, right? So this technology that was spurred by Netflix, kind of like they even host their own Netflix Prize, which is kind of a competition aimed at improving the accuracy of this algorithm. They've pumped in so much money to understand how to read the analytics, how to understand their user preference in order to grow their user base and keep people coming back for more. And I'm going to get into exactly how this applies to your podcast in just a moment. So you see, Netflix changed the entertainment game completely, you know, not just by offering tons of shows and movies, but by mastering the art of suggesting exactly what you might love next based on your preferences. This isn't just guessing, it's a sophisticated analysis of users and viewers' behaviors and preferences. Now, let's apply the same concept to your podcast using analytics. Just like Netflix, you, as a podcast, as the host, can see exactly which episodes your listeners tune into the most, how long they stayed for based on retention time, and also what's keeping them coming back for more. This is a goldmine. It tells you what your audience loves. Just like Netflix has figured out if you watched Stranger Things, you might also enjoy The Umbrella Academy. Now, unfortunately, most podcasts, which we're going to get to in a second, don't understand how to use analytics and data to make data-driven decisions to keep listeners coming back for more to increase their monthly growth. But I'm going to break that down in a moment, how you can do that. So here's how powerful that knowledge is. Netflix not only grew their user base, but kept them glued on their screens. Viewers binge watch content of their favorite shows because Netflix recommended series that hit the right notes, keeping them entertained and engaged. For your podcast, using your analytics means you can tailor your content so precisely that your listeners won't just hear one episode, they'll binge the whole series. And that's exactly what we want to do. You're no longer guessing and hoping that things are going to magically fall into place. You have a strategic plan in place, which is what most podcasters are totally missing. You minimize the guesswork and maximize engagement. I like that. Minimize guesswork, maximize engagement, right? All because you knew how to analyze data given to you by your hosting platforms. If you know how to analyze data given to you by your hosting platforms. In essence, you're leveraging podcast analytics like Netflix uses its algorithm, meaning better content, more engaged listeners, and a podcast that grows organically. But why do most podcasters have a hate-hate relationship with their analytics? The symptoms of a hate-hate relationship with your analytics. Now, this is for me, this was quite funny to make, right? So ignoring detailed analytics, not knowing how to read your analytics to drive consistent growth, having one-itis, having a love relationship with your monthly downloads, but totally ignoring everything else, all the other pieces of information that your hosting platform gives you. Never logging into Apple Podcast Connect to check on listener engagement on episode. That's your retention time, the completion rate, the consumption habits of your audience. Are you even aware of what that is? Again, this is the symptoms of hate-hate relationships when it comes to analytics. But it gets worse because when you do all this and you ignore analytics, you don't pay attention to it, your listenership essentially stagnates. Your numbers don't grow. It doesn't reflect the quality or the potential of your podcast. You have limited audience engagement. Monetization becomes incredibly hard if you don't know what your listeners love and enjoy, and your scaling efforts become challenging. Even if you promote on social media, you can't get people binging your content, which leads to slow growth, and you're basically shooting in the dark, never truly knowing what your listeners want, all because you overlooked your podcast analytics. Now, maybe is because you're feeling overwhelmed and uncertain due to the fragmented analytics scattered across all platforms. I get it. It's pretty confusing a lot of the times. To be honest, the hosting platforms don't make it easy. But like I said, I totally get the hate-hate relationship when it comes to podcast analytics. Trust me, I generally do. But I also know how powerful it's been for our clients at Get More Listeners Academy. The problem is there's no comprehensive guide on how to use analytics to grow until now. So here's a comprehensive breakdown of 3 proven ways to use your analytics for faster podcast growth. So you can thank me later. I'm being dead serious. I'm about to drop some serious sauce, so you don't want to miss it. This is going to be some juicy stuff. So firstly, we're going to break down how to use analytics to enhance your intros to keep listeners hooked from the start. Second, I'm going to break down how to use a strategy called Trend Spotter to identify what topics your audience truly cares about, even if you have a small audience. And then I'm going to show you how to leverage promotional analytics to maximize your marketing efforts, so you know what platforms on social media to focus in on, and you know whether or not concretely, if you promoting on social media is actually making a significant difference to your podcast growth. So the intros of your podcast play a crucial role in retention rates. It is the first impression and it sets the tone for the entire episode. So just like Netflix uses algorithms to recommend content that immediately captures viewers' interest, enhancing your podcast intro ensures listeners themselves are engaged right from the very start. So what's the strategy? Well, focus on crafting compelling, relevant, and intriguing intros that promise value and excitement, mirroring how Netflix chooses to highlight the best, most engaging parts of their content to hook the listeners and audience in. Steps to actually optimize your intro. Well, number 1, you need to understand where people are dropping off. So analyze your retention time. Use platforms like Apple Podcast Connect and examine where your listeners are dropping off during the episode. So you want to focus specifically for this specific part on your intro. What you want to do is identify the drop-off points, right? So look at the patterns where engagement decreases. If you have many listeners leaving during the intro, that's a cue that something needs to change. So this is basically just telling you, hey, your intro is pretty crap. We need to make it far more intriguing, right? We need to do something. We have to make a change in order to keep more of the listeners. So here are some options to think about. So number 1, maybe just shorten and enhance the intro, right? So based on your findings, you might have to shorten your intro. Remove any redundant parts or anything that doesn't add or engage your listeners immediately. So instead, a practical example of this is, a lot of our clients before they'd have really, really long intros, given an insight of the bio of the guest or talking about what the episode's all going to be about, yada, yada, yada. but having that actually hurt the retention time at the start. And I'm going to show you an example of what this practically looks like in a second. So what you need to do is then keep it short and concise, like only focus on the main parts that's going to add value to your listeners. So then you want to add intrigue and make it super engaging, right? So introduce intriguing hooks that promise value and keep listeners curious of what's coming next. Make sure every second of your intro adds genuine value. So this is an example, sorry for the terrible screenshot here, but this is an example of a past client. So this is actually their Spotify analytics for podcasters. You can use that platform as well to look at your retention time for Apple and Spotify, or for Spotify specifically. And then you want to go to Apple Podcast Connect for Apple. So you can see here where the drop-off is. Like if I zoom in here, you can actually see where the drop-off is. And that's a massive drop-off within the first 5 minutes of an episode. And that tells you straight away, again, that's not good for engagement. How do we fix this up? And then this is an after. So after we fix this, she literally had 100% retention time. I think it was actually 97 or 98. So she literally doubled her retention time just because we improved her intro. This is huge for your engagement. This is huge for your growth. This is huge for keeping listeners coming back for more. And all because we literally shortened it from being like 5 minutes to around 90 seconds. And we focused more on the value the listeners were going to gain. And we didn't focus on the guests and what they're doing, but focus on, okay, this guest is a PhD at anxiety and is going to share with you X, Y, and Z, right? We're not just focused on the guest and it's PhD. And no. Again, keep it short, keep it concise, and keep it listener focused. So the second thing that you can do when it comes to using your analytics to grow is using something we call a trend spotter technique. So Netflix, CineWatch, they analyze vast amounts of data to understand viewers' preferences and predict what new content they are likely to enjoy. Similarly, using a trend spotter tool, you can analyze your listener data to identify trending topics, ensuring that your podcast content resonates with your current audience and their interests. So the strategy here is to implement these tools that I'm going to break down for you. You can figure out the most popular episodes and also what's trending and topical in real time. Again, similar to how Netflix uses ratings, reviews, patterns to shape their own content strategy. So how to use this trend spotter? So first thing you have to do is, number one, categorize your episodes. So organize your episodes into categories based on their topics. So if you have a podcast about business, it might be lead generation, sales, operations, whatever it is, split it up into categories. Next, you want to analyze downloaded data. So what you want to do is that you don't want to assess the average download number for each category. So this will help you identify what the most popular episode is. Like what are the topics that your audience love the most. So if you have the 4 categories, like I mentioned here, lead generation, sales, operations, and you realize that, oh, actually on average, like our listeners love episodes about sales, that can dictate what direction you go in. Next, you want to then, of course, shift your content strategy to focus more on the topics with the highest number of engagement and downloads. So again, this tailored approach basically means you're always producing content you know your audience are genuinely interested in. And it's going to be important you think of creative ways to cover a topic. For example, this is a video about analytics, but I'm talking about it in a new and different and unique way. You know, I'm drawing up an analogy about Netflix and how that applies to you and what you can do. Think about how you can cover the same the popular topics on your show in different and more unique ways. What a trend spotter also allows you to do is allows you to basically see, okay, I've covered, you know, on average, I get 100 downloads on operations, but I've covered that 50 times. And then I have sales, I've covered 5 times and I get an average downloads of 200. So now you can basically see that you're overperforming on sales, but you haven't covered sales a lot in the show. So you can see a lot clearer and again, make better informed decisions rather than just going down a path you're not sure is actually helping you grow. The third and final thing, right? Measuring success of promotions. So you want to kind of evaluate the effectiveness of your promotional strategies. You need to know what works best when attracting and retaining new listeners. Netflix uses sophisticated metrics to track which types of promotions lead to most viewer engagement and subscription uptakes. In a similar way, using promotional analytics for your podcast can help you understand which marketing campaigns are most effective in attracting and retaining new listeners for your show. Strategy. Focus on analyzing the outcome of different promotional strategies. So let's say, for example, you're just promoting on social media. Isolate that action, right? Focus strictly on that. If you're going on newsletters, focus on newsletters. If you're doing collaborations as guesting on other people's podcasts, focus on that and then optimize based on the outcome. So you want to measure key performance indicators. So really you're looking at listeners' growth per episode. You're looking at the engagement rate of the episode. And you kind of, again, reflecting Netflix's approach to data, making data-driven decisions. So steps to measuring promotional success. Step 1, establish a baseline. Determine your average daily download and get a clear reference point of before and after. Another way you can do this is by asking yourself, how many downloads do I get in the first 7 days? And that will be your baseline. So on average, how many downloads do I get in the first 7 days? And that too can be your baseline. Now, when you launch a new promotional efforts, whether that's you guessing on another podcast or promoting heavily on social media or trying paid ads, you want to just track the subsequent uploads. You want to track how well the episode performs. How fast do you get? What is the number of downloads after the first 7 days of you publishing a new episode? Did it really help or didn't it make a difference? And you'll be able to see a big spike. And then of course, like I mentioned, analyze the impact, right? So look, is it a significant increase in downloads or engagement? Does that correlate to your own promotional activities? This data will tell you what is working and what isn't. So here's an example of what we did an experiment to prove that guesting or sponsoring other podcasts helps you grow. So this is data from our hosting platform. We use Captivate, and I think Captivate is awesome for multiple different reasons, but you can actually look at the total number of downloads for that day, but also the unique listener, like how many individuals actually viewed your podcast, right? And we can see that we have a baseline, right? The darker purple is the unique listeners. And then the downloads is the total downloads for that day. And this was the day that we actually had one of our promotional pieces. So we sponsored a podcast. They shared an ad to their audience. And on that day, we saw a massive, like almost a doubling of our downloads for that day. So we had the same kind of similar uniques, but a lot more people, because they're newer, actually went through and listened to more episodes because, again, they've just discovered this. Perfect. Now, because of this, I know that this strategy works for us, right? So the final part really is to refine and repeat. So use the insight that you gain. I can't stress this enough. You have to be testing things. For our clients and for the Get More Listeners Academy, we really, really focus in on having data-driven approaches. We're not just guessing. We want to focus more of our tactics and our efforts on what we know is going to get the best results, and then cutting out the things that aren't going to contribute to growth of your show. I think that's so important. Like if you're a business owner, coach, expert, topic focused show in your niche, you've already got so much going on right now as a podcaster that you kind of need to make sure that every rep you put in with an episode goes the longest way. So here are the benefits. Increase your listener engagement by making your intros more compelling and by focusing on preferred topics of your audience. You'll keep your audience engaged for way longer. When you do this, Apple and Spotify will actually recommend your podcast more to new listeners because you're keeping users on their platform. You're helping them. So they're going to help you and recommend your show to more people. When you have a lower engagement, it's terrible for your SEO. The second bit, high download numbers, right? When you're tailoring your content to your audience's preferences and effectively promoting your episode, this only leads to more growth because you're not guessing. You know exactly what your audience wants and you're giving it to them, which increases them coming back for more. And when they come back for more, it leads to faster growth month after month. And the final piece is improved ROI in your marketing. With data-driven insights, you can allocate the right marketing budget if you want to guest on people's podcasts, if you want to sponsor other shows. We allocate budget to sponsor other podcasts because we know it works for us. But if we didn't do the testing ourselves and didn't use a data-driven process to figure out if it works or if it doesn't, we're just guessing. We're just burning money and burning time and wasting everyone's time. But by doing this, we know where to put our money, where to put our energy, and where to put our efforts to get the best results possible. So remember, each of these strategies relies on detailed understanding of your podcast analytics to help you make better data-driven decisions to drive growth and more engagement. By systematically applying these frameworks, you'll turn insight into action and see tangible improvements on your podcast performance. Take action. If you've gotten this far, let me know what you think down below in the comment section. But more importantly, again, take action. And there you have it. Now you know how you can steal Netflix's and to be more precise, $262 billion strategy to grow your podcast. So look, my name is Anthony Moneri and you have been absolutely fantastic. If you found this valuable and you're looking for more insights and you're open to exploring new ways to grow your podcast, I'm going to recommend the first link down in this video description. Yes, it's going to take you straight to a pitch. It is a VSL, video sales letter, and the whole point is to kind of walk you through our 4-step growth and retention system. This is how we help our clients grow their shows and monetize their podcast. If you like that, great, awesome. If you're not interested, that's totally fine as well. Again, that's down below, no pressure and no harm's done. All right, peace.